Good evening. Welcome to the World War III report with me and William, Ellie and William. Um, he's the host, and we're both the hosts. So welcome to the show.
Yeah,
And
well, we are.
yeah, um, except for my mic don't reach over to you. Well, it might if I put it in between us. But you're right on. You're right on the mic. So, I had someone come in the office and they knocked my mic off my desk, and so it's all wobbly now. I'm not, but it still works. I was like, oh no, I thought it was a dog, but it was somebody else with a vacuum. So, hello to Miss Karen, and Karen is our moderator. So jump on in and make a comment or a question, or if you want to say hi, Mom, we'll throw it up on our board where it can be seen. Uh, William, Monday, he had two more little uh, tidbits of info to tell you guys. I'm going to let him go at first, and he'll get the two in. And then I got something on um, the leader of the Navajo Nation is very pissed at AOC. Yes. So he put her in her place. So go ahead, William. You're first.
So Monday, we talked a lot about international things going on, but we have some interesting things going on here at home that are, I guess you'd say, quasi-connected to the international situation, in that it's affecting our troops that are coming home and our first responders here at home. So we had a manifestation of it, Monday morning, or Sunday morning, I guess, early in the morning, or late at night, and then early Monday morning. The director of public safety of Miami-Dade municipality in Florida went through a severe psychological shock. Now, I'm not going to share his name or his wife's name or any of that business, but what it boiled down to is there was a conflict between what is effectively the chief of police there and his wife. Now, for civilians that don't have to, I don't know what's a good word, don't have to force themselves into harm's way. That's basically what not being ineffective in a stressful situation. You have to set your emotions aside and go directly to your training. All right? And you're basically going to war. Firefighters do it, police officers do it, surgeons do it. In fact, we all kind of share the same humor. The military does it. We just call it gallows humor. It's gallows sarcasm. It's how we communicate. And most civilians don't really understand it. It sounds a little bit sick if you're not involved in those situations. But that's just the humor, and humor is, of course, the last thing to die in a human being in psychology. And so it gets a little, well, right. Anyway, so he and his wife, they were at a sheriff's convention in Florida. I don't know which city it was exactly. It seemed to be nearby. And they got into some sort of a conflict at that sheriff's convention, and they took themselves outside to try to work it out. And things just went downhill from there. Now, we don't know if maybe she was woke or he was woke, and that all manifested itself in a convention. You know how that could happen. You could end up being married to a blue pill or a red pill and not even know it until the what ifs are thrown at you, right? And that's what these sheriff's conventions do, is they bring up the what ifs. and the how-tos and what we've learned from the past. When we debrief after an operation, we learn from our mistakes. So if you're somebody that's not using those tactics, you're not using those tools every day, policemen and firefighters and paramedics, they do their job so the rest of the population can go through their lives and be productive, be psychologically connected to their family, to their community, to the schools, to the PTA, and have a good psychological, strong base. The problem with folks that have to go to war every day, that's what you do when you're in the military. Even if you're not going to war, you're training to go to war. It's the same as if you're going to war. You're competing against other people that are trying to make you fail or catch you making a mistake. And so it's a continuous, unending pressure. Even when you're sleeping, you're trying to solve problems. Well, what happens is you lean back on the family members in your home to carry your psychological well-being. You, by default, often, and I majored in psychology, so I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. I'm not, a PhD or a psychologist, but we've seen this in the past. And when there's a threat on a relationship, that these individuals have placed a great trust of their spouse or their children or their significant other, right? Or parent, grandparent, whoever it may be, everybody has a social network that they lean on. And when that's threatened suddenly, and you have been so far out in front of yourself, what happens is all that stress that's been building up over the years that you've been setting aside loops back and comes back on you. So not only are you dealing with that suddenly, but now you're dealing with a situation at home that you have no comprehension of how you got there. And what happens when you find yourself in that situation is oftentimes, not just sometimes, oftentimes, you completely check out of reality. You go into that same polished function of doing it, whatever it is you're trained to do. Now, it'll be derivated a little bit to meet your current need, but that's what's going to happen. And what happened with this officer is he attempted to take his own life. Now, from the last I heard, he's still with us, but he did put his service weapon or his personal carry weapon to his head and discharged it. So,
and you can live through a bullet wound to the head. When we were
he fired at his temple, and I'm not going to tell you the best way to do it if you want to get the job.
No, we don't want to hear the best way.
Yeah,
we might get in trouble for that. They'll definitely give us a strike.
When you discharge at your temple, there's a good chance it's either going to go through the back of your eye sockets and you're going to end up blind, or it's going to travel through your sinuses and you're going to have a whole bunch of reconstructive surgery. And because you discharged it right next to your head, you're going to probably lose hearing in one ear.
Yeah, we had a guy at Beale Air Force Base when we were out there that he was a hunter, and he had the gun sitting on the seat next to him, and he brought it in front of him and was going to get out of the truck, and it discharged and it blew, like a baseball cap, the bill of it, where it connects to the hat, it went upward. And he walked into the emergency room with a hole in his head.
A weapon discharged that close to you, I can't even express what the tectonic movements that go on inside uh, the parts of the body that are struck. If you saw it in high-speed slow motion, it would blow your mind.
Yeah, they do that on the
I mean,
Wildlife Channel. They show some of that stuff, the slow mo, and
yeah,
all the different guns. Which
yeah,
they showed one the other night on there. It was guns that aren't allowed by the government, and I seen one, and I thought it was like a Tommy gun, like a machine gun. It's got the little round piece on it. Now this one here was later, and it looked like a sawed-off shotgun with the round thing on it, and it shot shotgun shells. And I thought, wow, what a gun!
yeah. They have a big
Can you imagine
shotgun
the kick
slug
on that?
and gate.
You know, those that's been raised around shotguns, they think it's grand to get one of them. I don't know all the calibers, but a big shotgun, and they give it to you, and you know what it's going to do to you. It's going to throw you backwards. And, then later on in life, you get married and you go out with your hubby and your friends, and they're like, hey, here, try this gun. And I'm like, no, I'm not dumb. I've done that before. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
No, find another woman you want to laugh at.
Your friends trick you a little bit. You discharge your shotgun for the first time. Don't have your back up against something solid because
No.
you're going to break your clavicle.
Yeah, because most time you put it up on your shoulder.
Operation.
You'll throw your shoulder out. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I like a bow. Yeah, a bow is much nicer. And I got one that it almost self cocks itself because I'm real weak in the hands and arms, so I got the whole shebang, and so I just shoot it, and I love it. No bang, no noise. I don't have to wear ear muffs or the ear protectors, and I just go and shoot. And they're like, "Here, have a gun." I'm like, "Oh, I'm good with my bow. I'm good with my bow." I've even showed it on the show, so that's my.
You can't accidentally discharge a bow.
That's true, and it's kind of hard to. I mean, I wouldn't maim anybody. I wouldn't shoot at the chest or nothing. I go for the legs because if they're going to run after you, take their legs out. I'd even do that for self-defense. You shoot their legs out and they can't chase you.
Well, I argue against that.
I know.
Okay.
Many people have argued with me, William.
The military
a
and the police are trained to shoot at the center of the mass because at the time of emergency, your ability to aim and everything else becomes less effective because your heart rate's gone up, your endorphins just kicked hard, you're breathing differently than you usually do, and it's a real difficult thing. This is one of the things Special Forces train at is keeping calm during a time of firing weapons.
I get excited. I see deer, usually it's deer hunting. And I see the deer and I'm getting excited like, oh, how beautiful. And they're like, shoot, shoot, shoot. So I'm like, you sound like the gator dude. Hush.
So,
and they're like, shoot, shoot. And I'm like, oh, Bambi. People believe me. Yeah, it's all Bambi. And I've never been able to get one yet, but I don't go often enough. But I did have a deer. I was sitting along a trail that came out, and I was in like hot pink stuff. Everything was hot pink. And this buck came out, and it was probably, it depends on how you count them. Some states it would be a 4-pointer, others it would be an 8. And it came out of the woods. And it looked at me. I was on to the right of the deer and looked at me. So it came all the way out, and just almost like nose to nose with me, looking at me, trying to figure out what the heck I was. And I was just frozen. No, I didn't have no gun, no nothing. And if a deer gets a hold of you, it's going to mess you up. Them antlers
Don't move.
they'll,
They can't understand what you are.
yeah. So I stayed really quiet, and then it kind of wandered off. And I told the ranger came through to kind of check everybody and check tags, and it was looking at some tags for some hunters and stopped, asked it, how everything was in our camp. And so I told this guy and this lady, and they looked at me and they said, "Did you have a gun?" I said, "No." And they said, "Don't go in the woods without a gun. Even that trail, don't go in the woods without no gun." They said, "You realize that deer could have killed you?" I was like, "Well, yeah, but it didn't. It was being nice." And the guy says there's no such thing as a nice deer when it figures out what you are. It would have definitely hurt you. So,
They just act and react.
that's it.
So,
So William, go ahead and
what
finish off.
What I want to talk about here is I'm going to give you some ideas of people who go through this process, and you'd be surprised. Sometimes it's business owners, okay, heads of banks, lawyers, judges for sure, right? And of course, emergency doctors, and doctors for the most part are fighting a war against mortality. So they're under constant stress, but at least regular hour doctors can have a time to decompress a little, and they have a little more medical training than the rest of us, which is good. And then you've got your military, your first responders. You also have like ship's captains. You'd be surprised, but truckers are also in this thing, because they have to have absolute attention for 8.5 hours a day. They can't make a mistake.
That's it.
Because they could hurt somebody or they're going to hurt themselves. So this happens to a lot of people. Now, if you're the spouse of one of these people, right, or the significant other of one of these people, don't take for granted that the person you're dissolving a relationship with has your capacity to understand the situation, especially if your spouse is one of these people. And these people tend to be, middle income folks, at least. They go out and do dangerous things so they get a little better pay. And so it's good to marry these folks, right? But when you marry somebody like this, an airline pilot, for instance, you're alone a lot of the time. A lot of pilots have second apartments, on both coasts, all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so they get to show up home for 3-4 days every couple of weeks sometimes. So these relationships are tenuous anyway, especially with military, where you deploy, you can't take your family with you. The government has this idea that if they wanted you to have a family, they would have issued you one.
Yep, that's what they tell you too.
That's exactly what they say. They say it exactly that way.
Yeah.
So you end up in these tenuous situations, and then these spouses have to deal with fear of how their spouse is going to deal with these situations. Now, they don't have the training of their first responder or the pilot or these high-functioning folks. They're not high-functioning in that they're different than everybody else. It's just that they've taken a part of the focus of their mind to deal with problems that are presenting themselves right now out in front of them. They don't have the time to deal with stuff that's let's say, water under the bridge behind them. They have to lean on their spouses for that, because everybody, it doesn't matter who you are. And we learned this at the Hanoi Hilton. Everybody has a breaking point. Everybody has a breaking point. And no one person's breaking point is the same. Okay? So when they hit that breaking point, they're not going to act rationally. They're not going to be functionally, they're going to look like they're functional like everybody else, right? That's how they're trained to do.
Mm-hmm.
But they've checked out. They're gone. Now, if they've had training, if it's been indoctrinated in them, they will know that this is a temporary problem. So you don't want to bring a permanent solution to a temporary problem. But they don't get that training. That doesn't get shared. So I want to give a resource out here. Now, there's a show on YouTube called Sean Ryan, R-Y-A-N. Now, he's a spec ops, means special operations. He was an operator for the CIA. And he brings on people from all the military, first responders from everywhere, because he had to go through all this. He was lucky in that a lady grabbed onto him because he didn't have a spouse at the time. As you can imagine, CIA spec ops are all over the world. They don't really have time to have a family.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so a friend of the community, the special operations community, invited him out for a hunting outing on his farm in Florida, and his daughter saw him. So that was the end of him being single. You know how that works. If they choose you, that's pretty much the deal. So she had to kind of deprogram him. He was a little spooky for a while. And he's produced a show. Now it's on, I believe it's on Spotify. It's like the top 2 or 3 shows on Spotify. And these are long format shows. And they talk about the things that bring these crises to the fore.
Yeah.
And they talk about what they did in the service and how they reacted, and they what they basically are doing is debriefing and finding all the mistakes that they made, right? And then they turn around and project that back at their own lives. And of course they get shocked by the outcomes.
Yeah.
And it's just like almost going into a 12-step program. It's a shock to the system. So if you're a spouse and you know the relationship is going to be over, you've made that decision, get a therapist to help you. Don't do it on the side of the road. Do it in a therapist's office. Seriously, spend a couple dollars, because this guy, his son was one of the officers in Dade County, right? He had 3 other beautiful children, and he checked out. He checked out, and this is dangerous, not just because he was. They say suicide is a coward thing to do. I got news for you. That's not the case. The coward thing to do is take and direct your fury and your anger outward. He at least took himself out of the equation and not somebody else. Well, when you do that with these folks, okay, that are designed to do harm, A lot of them are designed to do harm, even policemen, right? You can be the one that gets harmed. So anyway, this is a really good source of help. It's free. It doesn't cost a penny. It helps you work if you've been one of these people that go to war every day, you know, no matter what your realm is. Stock traders, you know, down in the pits making the trades. It's the same thing, right? Be careful with each other, because you can end up living with the consequences. Now, they get a little bit more money for the jobs they do, but the prices they pay for that little bit of money is really astronomical. A lot of these folks, when these dissolutions of their marriage happen, will be basically personally non-functional for a couple of years, and it can take them up to 30 years to sort this stuff out, because it's intertwined with all this other bad stuff that's happened out in the world. You can't extricate the two if you're that individual. The spouse can, because they can see it and they can measure it based on the other people in their community, what's going on and what the impact is. But the person that's involved in it, they become blind to it. All right, we can move on. Next, we're having we have to be careful the words we use, some infections that are making their way into, you know, our communities from other global communities, we'll call them. Now, you can be anywhere in the world basically now in 18 hours. There's no reason in the world you can't be halfway around the world in 18 hours now. So we're seeing a rise in, right now, the big thing in 44 states is tuberculosis. Now, we've known how to deal with this for quite a while. It's a bacterium. So you need to have, you know, the little drop put on you, they scrape you and put the little drop on you and see if it reacts. If it does, you know, take care of it. Don't assume that you're not going to get tuberculosis anymore. Now, having said that, okay, all these different diseases that are now coming into the country, like malaria, and we haven't had dysentery for a while, and, you know, the tropical diseases. We're used to the basic measles, mumps, rubella, polio, chicken pox, that sort of thing. You always are getting some small dose. Nobody lives in a clean environment. It gets on the dust in the air. Mm-hmm. It comes in as pollen. Mm-hmm. On pollen, it gets distributed by the pollinators out there in the world, bugs. The vectors are endless, okay? But that's good, because that gives your body a chance to start fighting these things earlier on. So they're not instantly lethal, right? They're not like the Black Plague and instantly lethal, because your body has had a chance to start building up antibodies to fight this thing, right?
Yes.
So when you get them, if you notice there's a tick up in your area, don't everybody run out and get an antidote for these things.
Yeah.
Be sure. But if there's an uptick in your area, take care of yourself, be proactive, and you're not going to have
checked.
It's not going to cost a lot of money. It's not going to take a lot of time. It may be a little inconvenient, you know. You can live with that. But yeah, we can't take for granted that we have DDT being sprayed out on the mosquitoes like we did when we were growing up.
Yeah.
So we end up with a lot of other
Cancer.
things happening. Now, that's the be cognizant of your environment. Don't be terrified of it. Use your environment. Be happy in your environment, but be cognizant of it. That just means pay attention. It's a police word.
Mm-hmm. And you know, speaking of the border, they had the hearing today with Mayorkas. It's looking like
I heard it.
I didn't listen to. I didn't get a chance to sit and listen to it, but hopefully we can get.
So he's saying that the border is safe. That Americans are safe at the border, right?
And there's one judge that's not agreeing with the Biden administration.
Well, the thing is Americans. He can say that because Americans don't go to the border. They go to the port of entry.
Right.
Right. So they go to a port. They don't go to the border.
Yeah.
The only people that are on the border is people that are trying to cross the border illegally, and people that are trying to secure the border.
Uh-huh.
So you've got professionals and you've got folks that are trying to enter. So he can legally say and not have it be a lie that Americans are now safe at the border. Sure, they're safe at the border. They've always been safe at the border, right? Because they don't go there.
That's right. Now get this though.
I've people that are special forces that have approached the border out in Arizona, and they've had to deal with spotters, with sniper rifles, and everything else. You don't go to the border, and it's not safe. Even if you're special forces, you don't want to go in there without night vision, without going night. And if you can do it, Halo jump in so they're not looking for you. You come through one of their passes. So anyway, that's just a high altitude, low opening, meaning that you never see a parachute for a long time. They don't pull a parachute until the last possible moment that they won't break their body. And so spotters around they never see the parachutes.
Yeah.
It's a special forces thing. Okay, now moving on.
The other thing that happened today is Judge Tagar, and this is out of Southern California along the border, but this has happened with quite a few judges in I think New Mexico and Texas, is where they are going against a key part of Biden's policy of just letting everybody through. Now, it was put in place a long time ago. So this is what the policy was, is that they have to go, if they're going to come from South America and they get to Panama or Mexico City, that they must stay there first, not go to the border. That's been a policy that's been in place for many, many years. Well, Biden wanted to do away with it. Yeah, Biden wanted to do away with it. But we had a federal judge that has now said, nope, you're not going to get away with that. So this judge, thank goodness, kept it in place.
For defending the United States, right? He's the number one police officer and commander-in-chief in the nation. The buck stops at his desk, no matter what it is when it comes to national enforcement. Now, if he's not doing his job, the governors have to pick up the slack. Now, how are they going to do it?
It goes to the state.
They have an illegality happening in their state, right? So they're going to use infrastructure to deter it, to reduce it to a manageable level. And it's an intelligent thing to do. And that's what the judge is saying is, you've dropped the ball, but it doesn't absolve the governors.
Yeah.
Because the governors have a state constitution, just like there's a national constitution. It has to fit within the rights of Bill of Rights of the national constitution. But the state has mandates on the governors, and
Yeah.
governors have sworn to uphold it, and they have to live in those communities.
Yeah. Now the
You
other
can't
thing
be
was,
long.
the other one was they keep trying to take Texas and Arizona to court over the cages. And I think up to Carr had a case real close to this by, I think, Maxine Waters, to where these judges are looking at him and said, yeah, and this was during the I'm sorry, Trump administration. And now Biden administration, they're saying Trump put those cages in place. No, the
So
judges have to
what happened?
remind them that no, these cages were put in under the Obama administration. And when the data comes out in the court, you should see these senators and Congress, even their lawyers backing out. And they're like, okay. And then, and then of course they give them 15 days to appeal. That's the standard for some of these border policies. So even folks, even if they get this stuff in place, they got 15 days, and they'll re-put it through the courts, uh, and try to come up with something else, another fight, another case that they could throw in there to get these judges to change their mind. And they've been tying up the courts for about 3-4 years now. It takes,
Well,
get this, it takes 2 years to get before a judge. Now, if you are a migrant now that has to go see the judge, it's almost 8 years now before you got to see somebody because we've let so
right.
many in. So go
So it
ahead.
leaves them in alert for 6 years because the state judges are going to get through the courts earlier because they have attorney generals and teams that can work on it continually. Anyway, that was just what I wanted to say about what I heard about today. Now, better news is we have a new aircraft that's actually 2 new aircraft. One's Beechcraft, and I'll talk about it later, but it's called, let's see if I wrote it down. I hope I did. It's called a P as in Papa Mentor, and it's built by TACNAM. Now, TACNAM's is a company out of Italy, and they build a suite of airplanes that are very, very efficient. So what they've done with this Mentor is it's just a 2-seat airplane. It's small. It's basic. There's no retractable landing gear. But it has an upgraded suite of avionics, meaning it's got everything the big airplanes have in the cockpit. It even has a landing gear switch. Okay, now you're not going to put the landing gear up and down, but if you come in for a landing and your gear is up, the switch is up, you've made a mistake on the checklist, right? You have to get that switch down. So what this does is it makes an airplane that's affordable, number one, that's durable, number two, so it can be kept outside if you have to, right? It's got all the big avionics, so you can get your private pilot's license, and you can get your instrument, I forget the name of the word, endorsement. So you can get your instrument endorsement, meaning that you can fly on instruments from air traffic control. That means you can fly blind. You can fly without ever seeing where you're going. You can land almost without seeing where you're going, okay? Because you have glide slope, you have localizers, you have GPS, you have synthetic vision. So you just look at the screen and fly it right in, okay? So that's taken care of. You can use it to train other pilots. It's okay, it's a 2-seater. It burns about 6 gallons per hour. That's airplane that has those kinds of endorsements and also be able to train for getting your commercial pilot's license, that plane is capable of that because it has all these high upgraded Garmin, they call it Garmin 1000 avionics suite. And we have some other suites coming out right now from some other vendors that are very good. Aspen's got one. There's a couple others, and I just can't remember their names right at the moment. But anyway, so you can get all your training on this. And this is great. You can also use it to get your avionics training, right? To be able to repair avionics and your airframe and power plant license, meaning you can fix other people's aircraft, because you go through the program to fix other people's aircraft, you end up fixing your own aircraft and having somebody else inspect it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a whole of aviation tied up in a very modestly priced airplane. Now, if you go out and get, say, Diamond DA40, okay, it's a single engine. It happens to be run on kerosene, not gasoline, which is a great idea. You're talking $700,000 to $800,000 for an airplane that you can easily take 2 people and luggage. Now they say it's a 4-person. Well, yeah, it's a 4-person if you only have half a fuel load and they leave their shoes on the tarmac. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
American people are a little bigger than in Europe, and so most general aviation aircraft, they only have a 1,200, 1,000 to 1,400 useful load. So every pound matters, and being able to have a small aircraft like this that doesn't have a huge fuel burn. If you're up in a King Air with twin engines, you're talking 30 gallons on each side an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get it throttled back maybe 60%, you might get it down to 15 gallons per hour on each side. That's 30 gallons an hour at $6 a gallon, because aircraft fuel is more expensive. I don't know if people realize that, but it's actually more expensive because it has to be made especially for aircraft, because we have so many aircraft that go, all the way back to the 40s. We have to maintain fuel for. And Shell happens to do that for us in general aviation, and kudos to them. Thank you. And we're working right now to get to low lead. We don't have no lead yet, but we're getting to low lead, and we're hoping to get to what's called E85, meaning 15% is alcohol. And that's a problem at high altitude, because you can have freezing if you get moisture separating from the alcohol. So it has to have stabilizers in it. So we're heading that way, and that's good, because the biggest producer of lead in the atmosphere right now is aviation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it gets spread all over everybody. Nobody's immune to this. Wherever a plane flies and the wind blows, right?
Yep.
So
just like the chemtrails.
It's good that we're upgrading these engines quicker and quicker. We now have some manufacturers that are putting Honda engines in light sport aircraft, because they're so well built and so dependable that it would be silly not to. There's no sense reinventing the wheel. Mm-hmm. And now we're having engines that are being produced now for drag strips and for motocross and for long-range, high-speed, high-power engines that are becoming so good with the electronics now that you can put a Mopar or a Ford or Chevrolet in a Cessna 182 and take the power from 300 up to 600, 650 horsepower. and only have like a 200-pound loss there. So with a slight modification of the wings or the cord, you can get a little more lift. You can also just use more airspeed, right? And horsepower delivers airspeed in a big way. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's great. It's going on. And one of the big manufacturers here in the United States, Beechcraft, of course, we have Cessna, we have Piper, we have Mooney. I don't know what Mooney is doing exactly right now. They come in and out of business a little bit. But they're very fast, very good, well-built aircraft. So Beechcraft has a new aircraft out. It's called the Denali. So I'm expecting it's going to be a heavy load, more of a heavy load aircraft, high altitude, because you got a big mountain, right? And it's tall, the Denali Mountains. So I'll have more information on that because I just got the blast on my email 2 minutes before I started talking to you. So the Beechcraft will have more information later, but the fact that we're getting new general aviation aircraft with the new technologies now is a great step forward. And these airplanes, they're going to be with us, a lot of them, for the next 80 years. Mm-hmm. We're flying airplanes from the 30s and 40s still. So, yeah, it's good to see when we have some new aircraft coming out and applying the new technologies. Now, we've had an experimental group now that have really gone into aircraft in a big way right now, and they've done a whole lot of engineering. And this engineering is getting accepted by the FAA now, and so the big manufacturers are now able to get patents on these things and start adding them to their aircraft, because their aircraft look old and dated and function in an old and dated way compared to these guys that are doing work in their own garages.
Yeah.
So they've had to step up their game, and the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, are changing some rules and reducing some restrictions and putting in some new directives. So you have to be cognizant of some additional responsibilities. So when they reduce a demand on the community, they have to also increase basically a patrol or an eyes-on issues that can develop easily. So you get the more opportunity, but with every time you get more opportunity, you get more responsibility, right? So this is happening, and this is all good things. And if you want to go on the internet anywhere and look up AirVenture 2023 at Oshkosh, it's the biggest general aviation air show in the world. There's a lot of new and great things coming in. And you also get to see some military aircraft, and there's communities for each different type of airplane, and it's great because they're all parked together in different places, right? So that all one type of aircraft is located together, so they can talk to each other because they camp there, a lot of them. They make sure their airplane's safe and okay and everything, and they watch their plane and other people's planes. And so there's lots of dialogue, and that's good because we get what's called hangar talk about what's going on with these airplanes. And you have no idea how many lives have been saved just by other people that are seeing the same issues creep up in the same types of aircraft. So, yeah, lots of good things going on in aviation right now. So I'll let you go, Ellie.
No, you're fine. Now, we had another hearing that happened last week, and I got the chatter from my ladies at the Capitol, and they said that it went beyond the hearing. Now, what happened at the hearing was the leader of the Navajo Nation got to speak, and he was saying that they want to take the United States wants to take a 10-mile withdrawal area that includes numerous allotments, and it's got a lot of mineral interest of over 200 allotties. And so this has been something that's been helping the Navajo Nation all the way through New Mexico. And
So the Navajo Nation is its own nation, by the way.
yeah. And so
it is sovereign outside of the United States within the inclusive borders of the United States.
So there's
the government doesn't have any right to go and take any of it at this point.
Right. So this public land order that the United States wants to push, and this is the Democrats, it's pushed this public land order 7923. And what it does is it's going to take land away from the Navajo Nation. And so, and it basically, to me, that tramples on tribal rights. And it should. And so, of all things, AOC gets in there and decides that she's going to tell him, we are a Green New Deal now. You don't need no oil, no gas. You don't need none of that. And the Navajo leader, he said, you don't understand. It's not oil and just gas. It's mineral rights. Plus, it's our land that was given to us as part of our American.
It wasn't given to them; it was ceded to them.
Right. And
because
so
remember, they owned all the land we came in on. So we've only moved our borders up to where they are.
Yeah.
They've always owned land.
And
we're the newcomer.
She was one of the biggest voices against this Navajo leader. And so how I started this was, so when she gets out, the chatter that she has, oh, she's mad. They ought to just give it up. You know, we're looking at cleaner air. Doesn't the American Indian want cleaner air is what she was going on about. And you know, a lot of the people around her stopped her, and even reporters said, you have no right to be even saying this. And she was getting angry. So she is the one it's her and the squad. And, you know, they're on attack. And now she really wants this ban in place. And so there's a good possibility that the resolution will be voted on. I haven't looked to see if they have voted on it, but he did. The leader of the Navajo Nation was able to speak and say, do you realize that people on average make in between 19 and 27,000 a year on our Navajo Nation? How much do you make? And it shut her up. So this is going to be something that we have to think about as we go into the new Green New Deal. Are they going to start taking Indian nations and saying, you got to give it up? You got to give it up. Now, this is something Hillary Clinton wanted to do. Remember the pipeline that they were all fighting over and beating their drums and protests? And they're even protesting this, is they don't have the right to go on and tell the Navajo Nation or any Indian nation that they have to give up their land.
So any of the Indian nations, because we have a contiguous border all around those nations, right? If we want to run a pipeline, if we want to run an electrical system, whatever it is we want to run, right? A freeway. Now they'll allow roads because roads are valuable to them, right? So you can transit the nations, but these other things, they should have to go around. It's not their land. It's not. They come up with their own rules in their own tribal.
Yes. Yeah, their own law enforcement, their own hospitals, their own schools. They're in charge, right. And it should be that way.
The Indian nations are the only people in the United States that have dual citizenship. They have citizenship in their nation and as citizens of the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you realize that. Yeah. Yeah. Don't. That's not someplace we should go, because that now the federal government has so much more power because they can engage in lawfare, and that costs a lot of money. And these nations are poor, right? And so until it gets to the Supreme Court, their land gets messed up.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that's sad.
Oh,
And
they're protesting. They said they've got warriors out there, and I say bring in the skinwalkers and the Wendigos. You know, on them, send them home with the skinwalkers and the Wendigos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Send the hex on to AOC and the squad. But I want to move along because we got quite a few. The Navy and the Marine Corps and everybody's getting together for a big exercise. And then, you know, I kind of think in response, William, because, you know, they've been holding these exercises, but the Navy and the Marines they're talking of battle readiness. And so
right.
China.
This is exercises are bring yourself to the point, do all the training that is required to engage in full course combat. It doesn't do you
China did it a few weeks ago. Remember, they did their battle readiness exercise. Now we're doing ours. Now get this. So they're doing this, and so China's out big time with propaganda and news, saying that, you know, that's okay because the Chinese naval base in Cambodia is done. We have a pier for aircraft carriers, and now Cambodia port is now we can be battle ready there. And then what was it? It was North Korea decided, well, now we're going to have this little powwow. I can't believe all the powwows over there with all these big guys, William.
So remember when I talked in the past about global power dynamics. When a superpower moves in any way, all the other superpowers have to act. They have no choice. If you look at the study of war is a science, by the way, guys. It's not, you know, it's not a theory. It's not a religion. It's a science. It has hard rules. We're seeing a bunch of them violated right now in Ukraine, and we're going to see some bad outcomes that a lot of people in the military are aware of, that the civilian interface of the military and the civilian leaders over the military don't want to bring out into the public. But, yeah, anytime
but William, let me stop you for a second, because I know you know a lot about this. Now, I don't want to say it's a powwow with North Korea. It's Russian and Chinese government delegations are marking the 70th anniversary of armistice that halted the fighting in the Korean War and the Pyongyang. That's what this is about for North Korea, because I don't want anybody to think North Korea is doing like an exercise. Now, William, you know more about this armistice?
Right.
Go ahead.
So, back in World War I, we were fighting in the trenches, right? I think it was the Germans and the English, or English and French, on one side. So when Christmas came, one of them started singing Christmas carols, and they just decided amongst themselves as soldiers that there wasn't going to be a war for Christmas. That's an armistice. They all came out of their trenches. They gave each other gifts, hugs, shared things with each other. They're all Christians, right? So and Jewish people. So they all had things to say to each other because they're on behalf of their governments. They're all the same people, right? They all come from the same places. They all have the same genetics. They all have the same background. So there was an armistice. Well, that's what happens usually in civil wars, is an armistice happens. So that was just for one day. What happened in Korea at Pyongyang is 70 years of armistice. They are still at war. It's just a matter of winding it right back up.
Mm-hmm.
So there hasn't been a treaty. There's nothing.
Yeah.
They just have a demilitarized zone, and sometimes they allow delegations to walk back and forth across and transit a few people by train that are watched heavily by miners. This is no joke. That's a war zone.
Mm-hmm. So that's what that was all about. And then the U.S. is going to send $40 million in military aid to Ukraine again. Well, Putin found out about this. Now, he has launched Onyx, I think that's how it's pronounced, Onyx missiles in a retaliation, he said. And these are very fierce folks. They shoot up and then they can steer them. So these are some mighty missiles.
So what they have is multiple reentry vehicles. They're not just missiles. So they go up, and at their apex, the zenith, they open up just like a rocket that we might be sending to a satellite off from, right? Not that high, but
right.
Same idea. And then they have these multiple reentry vehicles that can be steered and reoriented in their fall to land where they want. And they come down and they're silent. So there's not like some streak coming by, so you notice it. It's so high altitude that you don't know it's there until it's there. And they can be violent, heavy weapons. And it's like the difference between the Buzz bomb, the V1 that Germany had, and the V2, which was a rocket that would come up and come back down into London, right? And so there's weapons that haven't been used yet. What's been going on in Ukraine has been generally a police action that's devolved into trench warfare.
Yeah, I showed a picture of or showed a video real quick of what it was, so everybody got to take a look at it. So that's what they're shooting at Ukraine. That's the new Supersonic. And
so the money they're sending in right now is, look, maybe you can buy weapons from the enemy. Maybe if you found another source and we're having to ramp up our production, that's a stopgap, just like, and then you don't have to use as many cluster bombs. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, and he was using the cluster bombs. He was going to use the cluster bombs. I'll have to correct myself on that. But he is now wanting to use these Onyx missiles. So, the war is still on, and we're still sending millions of dollars to Ukraine. And they're saying now there are so many Ukrainians in the hospital that it's almost more Ukrainians in hospitals than there are on the battlefield. They're dropping. And
that's scary. That's scary because they don't have the mortality, the good news, the mortality that we have in the United States, because they don't have ways to get people into surgery in the golden hour after being injured.
Yeah.
Right? You have 1 hour to get people in and stabilized, and if you don't do that, all the systems, the autonomic systems, start fighting against you and tearing the body down, not helping it, because the body just doesn't realize the magnitude of the damage.
Mm-hmm. And
so they've lost a lot more people to death, and their hospitals are still full. So that tells you the magnitude of the losses they're taking on the battlefield.
Yeah.
It's a meat grinder.
Yeah. And now the two last stories, and I'll let then I think William might have a few things to say. DeSantis was in a car accident yesterday. He's not hurt. His staff wasn't hurt. Uh, I don't. I think it was a little bit more than a fender bender, but it was in Tennessee, and I believe he was on his way to a rally. Uh, there's very sketchy reports. Now the other one is Secret Service has now went and made it so um, the Biden's dog, the German Shepherd, has bitten Secret Service so many times now. It has been banned from the White House or banned around Secret Service, which means they may have to get rid of the dog because Secret Service does protect him at home and abroad wherever he goes. And it only seems like it's a house, but mostly they're being bitten at the White House. And they're talking over a dozen times now in less than a year that this dog has bitten Secret Service. So, William, I'm going to turn it over to you for closing. Any last things? I know you had a few songs you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, we have some songs of the day to kind of go along with the other information I gave you on Dade County Police Officer. And let me see if I've got it written down.
I'm hoping it's in the show notes. I put links.
It is. I've got it here.
Good.
I just got to flip the page to it. I did write it down.
Thumbs up.
I was specific about it. I just got to find the darn thing. Anyway, it's you can look it up on YouTube, or LA will probably have a link.
I put the links in the show notes. So.
Pardon?
I put the link in the show notes.
Oh, okay. So there's the Civil War by Guns N' Roses. There's Leo and Stein Brocchioli that do a cover of Zombie. And then there's a Roxette cover. They do a Roxette cover also, but with, instead of Stein, Leo's wife, a gal named, I just lost her name in my head. Anyway, she does it with him, and it's a cover of Listen to Your Heart. And if you watch these things, you'll kind of get the drift of this Civil War thing that happens in families and in nations as well, right? So, yeah, and Leo's done a great job with it, and of course Guns N' Roses speaks for itself. Violet Orlandi is the gal that does Listen to Your Heart. So these are 90s songs, you know, they're the pop songs for, you know, the gals really like those, Zombie and Listen to Your Heart. And they've kind of turned up the heat on it and made it a little more metal. And they did a great job. So, yeah, have some little entertainment after, you know, the dark things we have to kind of cover so that you have the information to keep your lives, how would you put that, Ellie? Balanced and not have to become fearful without reason.
Happy, joy. Keep your life. Go out and get out and enjoy nature, or do something that you love to do that keeps you at peace or makes you happy.
You're getting gaslighted from every direction right now. So just watch the evil things and push it against those, you know, trafficking, maybe IDs that are put under your skin, or, you know, things that you don't want, digital currency, so they can penalize you for buying, you know, the wrong kind of detergent, whatever it is that they're going on that day. So yeah, push against the things that are important and really, really take a good look at the gaslighting that's going on and just leave it behind, because they try to get you all the way on one side of an argument and then all the way on the other side of an argument, so that you'll give up out of convenience and end up between the two arguments. And so they move you from where you were initially halfway to where they want you. And so they use fear, and they use carrots as well, to get you to do something that's not good for you or good for your family. So be aware of that. There's a lot of gaslighting going on. We are in constant state of just short right now of kinetic warfare, meaning sticks and stones, going from words to sticks and stones. So yeah, the information is just almost intolerable. So don't allow you and your families to not live your good life. You know, you only get one life. You only get one family usually. And so, yeah, be careful and take care of the things that are most precious to you, and also push back on the things that, you know, that are really important, not the things that are just hot air. And that's what we're trying to sort out for you in a way, to get you in a direction so you can kind of see where myths meet reality. And we're not telling you what it is exactly, but we're getting you close enough so that you can start seeing the dichotomy between the two sides, and then you can make an informed choice based on your own research, not on ours. All right.
Karen, the dog.
I really appreciate this. Help you out.
Yeah. Karen's answer to Karen's comment. They started counting it a year ago, and it's White House, and what was done at the White House, and the over a dozen times at the New Jersey home. So the dog, and German Shepherds are protective like that. So, they're just
German
gonna.
Shepherds are alpha. They're alpha animals, all right. And you take somebody that's military, or you take somebody in Secret Service, they have an aura about them. That they are in command, right? Well, that goes 180 degrees against that dog's senses, because that dog was trained to be in control.
Yep.
And somebody else is coming along and saying, you're not in control.
Yep, stand down, dude. German Shepherd says, I don't think so. Yeah, Champa. Yeah. They're going to ban them away from the Secret Service. I'm not sure if they're going to put the dog, I don't know what they're going to do with the dog. They're not saying, but the dog is definitely going to be charged, I guess, or Biden will be charged for the bites against the Secret Service. So anyway, folks, that is it. And come on back next week for the World War III report. And of course, I'll be on tomorrow with more news. And just a reminder, next Thursday, I won't have a show. I'm going to try to record something with William, and or I might have to do it sooner because it's starting to leak out of everything that I found out. So I have to really think on this, of how soon to get this report out, because it's very important. So anyway, folks, subscribe, hit the like button, hit share this with everyone tonight. And last night's program was a big hit with a lot of info. And it goes along with the report I'm fixing to do for you guys. You know, America is started, I'm going to say, with the American Indians. And they have more rights than we do. And hopefully, we can get our government to leave them and their nation alone. So with that, folks, have a wonderful Wednesday. And, you know, we love America. We love our flag. America will be great again. We just have to get the right people in office, folks. So have a great Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow, and God bless.